Two things before we jump into the video. Check out the Last of Us 2 spoiler cast I did with my friend Max Blancas, link in the description, and my voice feels pretty iffy, so apologies for that. So, Crash Bandicoot 1 wasn't a fun experience, with some terrible hitboxes and some stupidly difficult levels. But at least I have a few great games ahead of me before Crash 4 It's About Time comes out. Hi everyone, my name is Adzi. Welcome to a little discussion about Crash 2 Cortex Strikes Back. My last Crash video is my best performing video so far, so thank you so much for that. Don't forget to subscribe. Now, onto the video. I've never finished Crash 2 before. Similar to Crash 1, I played it on the PS3 and on the Nsane Trilogy, but I always ended up going on to Crash 3 just because I have so much nostalgia for it. So jumping into this game, it's a night and day improvement over the original. It's really impressive how much better it is considering that the game was released only a year after Crash Bandicoot 1. The addition of the slide mechanic alleviates many of my problems with the original, and as a player you feel more in control of Crash, and it's a significantly better experience as a result. I can only imagine how frustrating a level like Snow Go would be if you didn't have the slide mechanic. Whenever I think of Crash 2, this is the level I think about. Similarly to Crash 1, the first levels are a joy to play, especially on the Nsane Trilogy. Obviously the levels are beautiful to look at, and as I said in the first video, I think 3D platformers are at their best when the game itself is easy enough to run through, but the challenge comes in the extras, like time trials and 100% completion. And Crash 2 just gets this. The game is pretty easy to beat, bar a few levels which have a decent spike in difficulty, but the game could still be beaten relatively easily. One thing I should have given the original more props on is introducing a level type first in an easy level, then ramping up the difficulty later. Temple of Ruin and Ruination are great examples of this. Temple of Ruin is pretty easy and it gives you little platforms to rest on the log throwing parts. Ruination is the harder version of this, and it's a perfect example of a beatable level with side objectives that ramp up the difficulty. So the level is a run through an outdoor temple ruin, with some very precise jumps and plenty of enemies to avoid. I just loved this level. It feels good to play, and I thought this the second I started playing it. It has a really clever mechanic of having a log roll in off screen that you have to study the pattern to make it across the platform. While it is difficult enough, the level can be beaten relatively quickly. The side objectives are where the challenge comes from. I died a good few times trying to time my jump so that I didn't get hit by the log, and not once did I feel like it was the game's fault that I died. The slide jump combo gives you a lot more control, and I never felt frustrated at the game. Now that isn't to say I was never frustrated at my own skill level, but when I bet the gem challenge I felt great. Not once did I slip off a platform or anything like that. I saw the challenge, knew what I had to do, but just had to time my jumps well. Not miss a plank that I definitely should have hit or slip off some turtle bastard's tail like Road to Nowhere. There are levels that I had to keep trying to beat them, but I never felt like it was the game's fault. Maybe on one level which I will mention later, but for the most part it felt like it was my own skill that was holding me back. Now the game isn't without its flaws. There are still plenty of issues with the Nsane Trilogy, and again it's mostly the hitboxes. One level in particular was the most frustrating when it comes to hitboxes. The level itself is difficult enough, with plenty of enemies and obstacles to avoid. There is one enemy that I had so many bullshit deaths to, and it's this little shield bastard. He's pretty easy to kill, but for some reason his death animation can still kill you. It happened a few times where I hit him into the pipes, and when his shield lifted his leg was exposed, which killed me. And it just makes no sense at all. I actually had to go back and watch the footage that I recorded to understand how he killed me, and it actually just looks ridiculous. Now, call me stupid for the next point I'm going to make, but I'll have you know, I'm actually a genius. And you know what they say about self-praise, that it's the best kind of praise. But anyway, some enemy designs in Crash as a whole just don't make it obvious as to how you're supposed to damage them. Take these lizard enemies for example. I can clearly see that you can't jump on them, but whether you have to slide or spin to hit them isn't obvious. It's easy to see that you can jump on the Goomba or can't jump on the spiky turtle enemies in Mario, but there are a few enemies in this game that don't make it obvious by just looking at them. The worst part of the game is definitely the bosses. In true Crash fashion, the designs are great, so I can't fault them from a visual standpoint, but the gameplay of the bosses is extremely boring. Notably bad ones are N. Gin, Cortex and the Komodo brothers. The Komodo brothers offer no challenge at all. N. Gin was basically just spamming Wumpas, and then Cortex. I can't even explain how little this felt like a boss fight. It was just hold R2 and then press square when you get near. The obstacles weren't even difficult to avoid, so the boss fight was over in a couple of minutes. And this is the final boss and there's no challenge at all. I mean, 3D platformer bosses in general aren't too difficult, but this was just a whole other level of ease. Now, the best boss fight in the game was Tiny Tiger. Firstly, he's a really cool villain. Him and Dingodile are probably my favourite from a design standpoint. In the fight, you have to time your jumps so that when he follows you, the platform underneath him disappears. I think this is a really clever idea and I enjoyed it a lot. And the other bosses are so unmemorable that I could barely tell you anything about them, so that's really all you need to know about them. This game is a massive improvement on Crash Bandicoot 1. You can really see how they cemented the traditional Crash staples. Similar to most trilogies, the second is considered the best, like Uncharted, Spyro, and of course, Mario Brothers. The jetpack level near the end is a sign of what is to come with the series, with the more gimmicky levels. But unlike Spyro 3, I think Crash 3 implemented these very well, and is my favourite in the series. I wonder if my mind will change when I do the next video. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the reception I got on my first Crash video. It was really nice to see so many people willing to have conversations with me about the game, even though they didn't agree with me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.